Let's start the first animation. Now we have a stance that our character already starts out with. Go to File and Load DynoRig Stance.fxs from the Scenes folder. This isn't an animation, it's just a single frame in a single position. So now we need to have a position that the character will always be in if it's not performing an action. In the game industry, it's just known as an idle. The idle is an animation that plays as the character does nothing. And from this animation, other animations will come off of, like if he's going to transition to a walk or a run or another idle animation, such as nibbling his toes or doing something where he's standing still. This idle is going to be pretty simple. We're going to make it 60 frames long, so I'm just going to set the in and out to 60. You can set it down here in the fields. And because we have a perfect stance here, this is the stance he's always going to return to. So we have our body keys filter already set. Let's make sure we have something picked inside of the hierarchy so that the dope sheet will show dyno_body keys in the group. Middle mouse click on frame 60 and now we have an animation. It's a rather boring one, but we have our two main keys here in this animation. Now to be really cheap about it, we can just cut this animation in half and drop another keyframe in. Another pose just by grabbing the head and the hips. Multi-edit is still on, and then moving them down. You've now created a really retarded game animation. If we hit play, there's our idle animation. We've done nothing but define that this character is alive by moving it up and down. It could be breathing, it could just be sitting there moving up and down. Let's make that more interesting. We have this really long tail with all of these cool tendons and this really long neck with tensing muscles that's going to be trying really hard to keep his head still, but gravity's going to take over. So we need to add, now that we put our key poses in, put our passing positions. In this case, frame 30, let's do frame 15. Frame 15, let's start with the tail. The end of the tail here, as his body goes down, the tail may lag up just a little bit. And then it catches up on frame 30. Set that to 0 again, so now we have a keyframe. So as his body goes down, his tail lags, and then his tail catches up on the next pose. His body goes up, so which means on frame 45 it's going to lag down. So we're going to move it down just a little bit. And if this key doesn't look correct here, if it looks too shallow, scale that up by locking the graph in the Y. You can turn that back off again and you can adjust the keys. If you have this turned on, as you adjust the keys, it's going to scale the keys to fit the display. So now we have kind of a follow-through motion. We've taken a motion here, a curve, which was just an up and down. If we highlight here, this is a down up. We've taken this curve and we've offset it by 15 frames. So if this carried down through here, it would just look like a regular curve. We've shifted it, chopped the end off, and put it at the beginning so that we have a lag in the animation. Now the tail, pretty simple here on the second chain. As it goes down, the tail could just go up. So let's start the tail aiming down first on frame 60. Let's create that keyframe back on frame 0. And all we've done is we've just continued this on through. So it's not at the default position, but now it's following through. We didn't have to put any passing positions in, just our key poses. So we go back, that's what it looks like. Let's move that up a little bit more. I have the scale Y locked so that it doesn't look like it's actually changing, but I can turn that off. And then let's curve that one up a little bit more. Enter that, create that key back at frame 0. So it's just a little subtle. Let's hit play here. And it looks pretty good for an idle. See, that makes our pose look a little bit more alive than it did before. Let's go over to the head, and we'll do the same thing to the head. Just going to click on the lock to scale here. We'll start with Y. And don't set a keyframe if you translate. The head bobs down and up. Let's lag the head back and forth. So As the body goes down, the head, having some weight and mass, has to catch up because it's out on the end of a large lever. So it's going to pause and then move down, and then when it hits the bottom, it's going to catch up. So it's going to pause again on frame 45 and then move back up. So we've created a slightly different arc here. Hit play again, and so we've lagged it a little bit, and you notice how the neck is stretching. Well, the neck is stretching because we need to move other parts of the body back. We've only moved it on Y, so on Z, as he moves down, pick Z, move it in just a little bit. And then, because he's on his way back up, this Z will stretch out just a little bit. So now it looks like the head and neck are not stretching at all. So I'm just going to mess around with this just a little bit. It's okay if it squashes just a little because there is some flexibility. We hit play again, and that's what it looks like. We've only been focusing on single values here, so we focus on just the y-axis and then get the y-axis going, or just the pitch. We can make a compound pose by focusing on the y. We've done the y and z motion, and now let's add some lag to the rest of the face. This isn't locked in space. The tip of the nose has some weight to it, and so does the head, and they're all offset, so as he moves down, he may drag his head down on frame 30, and may drag his head back up on the end frame. Enter key, create a keyframe at frame 0, so he starts aimed down a little bit and then back up again. Scale those in. Let's not make those so extreme. So let's try this again. Hit play. Let's take a look at it. Well, so far so good. Let's take a look at it in 3D here. Is he moving too much? Too little? If he's moving too much on the Y, let's scale the Y down. Let's move the Y closer. So there's not as much variation. And because I'm operating on the end keyframe, I need to make it identical to the beginning. So I hit the enter key, type in frame 0, and now it looks the same at the beginning and the end, so it loops correctly. Good. Let's lag the spine. The spine does the same thing. It's sitting there just like the tail, where hips have moved down and the spine is stuck, lagging behind. So frame 15, in the passing position, it moves up ever so slightly, catches up, moves down ever so slightly as the muscles try to recover, and that adds just a little bit more movement. The hands do the same thing. Let's go to perspective view here and pick both hands. Use the A key to select, middle mouse click to pick the object in the 3D view. Now notice that it's displaying in local coordinates, so the Y is out, but if I left mouse click on Y, it actually moves up and down in the right coordinate system, which is the parent coordinate system. Turn on Coord Sys, make sure parent is selected, and Y is in the proper spot if that confuses you. So do the same thing. He's on his way down. Since the hands being out on long limbs lag behind ever so slightly, they catch up on frame 30, and then on the way up at frame 45, during the other passing position, they move down. So let's hit play. This is a pretty good idle animation. This has a bit more life than it had before when we just moved the hips down. And it's something that we can be a little bit proud of if the character stops doing something and has to spend some time standing still, like in a video game. We're going to create clips of everything so that we can save them externally and mix them in later lessons. So go into the Compose tab, and I'm going to show you how to create clips. These clips need to be created on something that has a group. We already have something with the group. Everything that's blue is part of the group. This clip is going to be called idle. The source is going to be the current group. The channel is going to be the motion, which is the translates and rotates. It's going to be an animation, not a pose, which is a single frame. It's going to capture all of the keyframes within the range. The range is what's set between these blue and red markers here, 0 and frame 60. The motion is going to be local keys. So all you have to do is hit copy, and inside the clips block we have the idle clip that's referencing our body keys group. You can take a look at the groups and see which groups match up. We have the dyno underscore body keys group, and everything that's listed in the group is shown up on the right side. And it is matched, since we haven't done anything like having multiple characters. The hips bones are being referenced to the hips curves, and they're all hooking up correctly. Let's go back to the clips. Right mouse click on the block menu, and we will save current and pick, let's go to our computer, C drive, Learn Messiah 4, Animation 2, Dinosaur. I have a folder called Motion. This is where I'm going to save all the MCP files, which is the motion clips. I'm just going to call this one the same thing, idle. Now we've saved just the motion externally so that we can reference that in later and mix it together in later lessons. And that gives us a place to hand off animation. If we have someone who's really good at mixing clips together, we just keep those clips updated and then use this file as our working file. Now we can get rid of this idle. The idle isn't sitting in any tracks or anything, and we still have keyframes sitting on our character. So we can go back in and update this and then save off another motion clip if we need to. Let's go to File. We're going to save this scene as dino rig idle.fxs.